And for the second morning in a row, here we go.
It's not in the world of technology.
Why not?
Mathew Dickerson.
Morning, Matthew.
You just love playing there. Any excuse for you?
Oh, hang on.
to play that.
We started that too early. We've lost a little bit of DCFM 88.9.
Oh, right.
That's too quick.
Well, I haven't got the headphones on, of course, so I can't hear that.
No, you haven't got headphones. That's why I don't know why you haven't got headphones. We've run out of money.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. A gamma ray burst at 99.999% of the speed of light. I don't think 5G does that, does it? Not quite so quick.
Well, not quite, and 3 by 10 to the 8 metres per second, of course, is the speed of light, and electromagnetic waves do travel essentially at the speed of light, not quite, but essentially at that. But 5G certainly switched on yesterday, so that's very exciting for Dubbo.
Yes, indeed.
When 5G was launched by Telstra a few months ago.
Hang on, can we go back? Can we go back? Because people might understand what 5G, 4G, 3G is. Let's start there.
Right, so the G is really just referred to the generation. So if you want to go right back, 1981, we had what's commonly called 0G, but the very first one, and the phone number was 007 it started with. So it was very ironic with James Bond number there, but that was a system that wasn't actually cellular. You could only talk on that particular mobile phone system in the one cell, so you couldn't move around with it. So you could take a phone call on the move, but you'd have to then stop once you took the phone call. 1987 is what's generally referred to as 1G. That was the AMPS, the analog system that started. And basically, as we went through the years, we had 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and then 5G, again, which was launched this year. 10 cities across Australia were launched this year, and that didn't include Dubbo, obviously the major capital cities, metro cities. But again, Dubbo, only a couple months after that initial rollout, Dubbo was turned on yesterday for 5G, which is very exciting. So as each generation goes on, it gets better and better. The first generations, back when we had 1G, for example, back in 1987, data wasn't a thing that was considered. Text messages only started 27 years ago.
That's right.
So it wasn't as if we sat there when 1G was brought out and went, well, we need to be able to have text messaging, we need to be able to have Facebook because it didn't exist, we need to have internet, it didn't exist. So all these things that didn't exist with 1G, as time went on, they needed to keep improving those things. And really, for example, the jump from 3G to 4G, there were 3 main reasons that development occurred, and that was speed, speed and speed. The 5G change is a little bit different to that. 5G is certainly about speed, there's no doubt about that. The theoretical speed of 4G is 1,000 megabits per second. You don't get that in the real world, but that's the kind of maximum speed of that. And typically in the real world, you might get speeds of 20, 30 maybe. If you're right next to a tower with only a few users, you might get 100, a couple of hundred maybe. The theoretical speed of 5G is 10,000 megabits per second. But the real world speed, we've seen it being used in Sydney, in the main core there at say 1.2 gigabits per second. Even in Dubbo yesterday, after it was turned on, we were doing some tests, getting speeds at 500, 600 megabits per second download speeds.
Ooh.
So very nice. So that's one huge advantage of it. But the 2 other things with 5G that make a huge difference. The first one is latency. So that's the time it takes for a signal to go from your phone to wherever you're getting data from and back again. So that's the round trip, the latency. And that becomes very important when we start to get the development of a range of things for 5G. So for example, autonomous vehicles, when you've got cars that start to drive themselves and they're communicating and working out where they are with a range of different technologies. But one of the ideas is they'll talk to other cars around them to say, oh, hi, Mr. Car behind me, you're getting a bit close to me, why don't you just move back a little bit, please, to make it safer driving. Now, latency becomes very important then. In 1 second, when you're travelling at highway speeds, in 1 second, you travel 27 metres. So if you're fairly close to a car and latency of 1 second would be terrible latency, but if you had 1 second delay, well, that car's travelled a fair way in that time. Yep. So latency on 5G is about 4 to 5 times better than latency on 4G. But the other big thing is the number of simultaneous connections. And this is all relative to the Internet of Things. So there are so many things that we're already connecting now. So cars, we've talked before about our cars being connected to the internet. But in terms of those Internet of Things, so many different sensors, devices are being connected. And the prediction is we will have billions, somewhere around maybe 20 billion devices connected within the next few years to the Internet of Things. The 4G network simply cannot handle it.
It couldn't handle it, no.
Simple as that. So 5G is obviously able to handle more. Now, there's a range of ways it does that in terms of technology, but one of the things that's different about 5G is the actual frequency. So the frequency, the current 5G that's in Australia now is around 3.5 gigahertz, 3.6 gigahertz. If you look at, say, 4G, that's typically around 900 megahertz or up around 1.8 gigahertz. So it's significantly higher than that. But we're talking about jumps from 3.5 gigahertz up to, say, 25 gigahertz.
Yeah.
You know, so we're talking about in the future there'll be jumps to even higher frequency. And if you remember from your old high school physics, the higher the frequency, the shorter the bandwidth. So effectively what you're getting is more data is able to be transmitted over that same time frame. The disadvantage to 5G is it doesn't travel as far. Because it's a shorter bandwidth, it's not able to travel over things, so more things can obstruct it. So what ends up happening is you'll have more 5G towers, but they'll be cheaper to erect and smaller devices. So you won't have the huge towers that we've got now. As you see more 5G come around, you'll see smaller towers, and again, less distance will be travelled over those.
I understand we've got 6 towers in Dubbo, is that right?
6 towers have been converted over to 5G at this stage, but again, that will start to increase because you just won't get the range out of 5G that you get out of 4G. I will mention very briefly the health risks. People sometimes jump up and down about 5G. There's various places around the world that they say we're going to ban 5G and it's all terrible. The simple matter is 1973 was when Dr. Martin Cooper from Motorola made the first mobile phone call in the world. In the time from 1973 to now, so 46 years, in all the testing that's occurred and in all the usage, I mean the number of people who've got more mobile devices in the world than there are people, there have been 0 cases of any health risks associated with mobile phones. Now that doesn't say it's never going to happen, but so far we've got 0 evidence. Yep. The most important thing to remember is that it's non-ionising radiation. Now ionising radiation is what moves electrons up an energy shell. Non-ionising radiation is not powerful enough to move an electron up an energy shell. So effectively, that means that we shouldn't have the sort of cancers that might occur with a nuclear blast, that type of thing. We won't have those, or theoretically won't have those with 5G because there's just not enough energy there. And if you think about all the radio waves that we're subjected to while we're sitting here, DCFM is broadcasting, that's a radio wave.
It certainly is. You wander into the kitchen there, I reckon it's cured a couple of my skin cancers.
Don't say that, no.
I'm only kidding. Only kidding.
So all the TV channels, all the radio stations, all the satellite communications, all of this communication we've got across the world, you cannot go to any place in the world that you're not being hit with some form of radio communications, and that's all the ones that man created. But you've also got the natural radiation coming out of this little thing called the sun that seems to be irradiating us constantly. And some of the radiation that comes out of the sun is bad, but the frequencies we're talking about are frequencies that are associated with non-ionising radiation. So I'm quite comfortable using it. I'm quite comfortable my kids to be using it. I don't have an issue in terms of that radiation and any fears that I might have. Again, some people are concerned about that, and researchers are working on that all the time. They're testing it with rats, they're testing it with a whole range of different frequencies. But at this stage, there's no different health risk from 5G as opposed to 4G, 3G, 2G, 1G.
I've got to say, you can stand on some high tension power lines and you get more radiation out of those than you would out of our tower that's out the back here.
Well, I actually know some people who, when they've been looking for properties, they've been looking for properties that have been underneath high voltage power lines, because they know it's safe to be under there, but some people are scared about it, so the price of that
goes down. Yeah, indeed.
But these are scientists that I know that effectively are buying land in those areas because they know it's safe to be there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Matt, all good. So basically, we get the old 5G. Well, my phone can take 5G, and
there are phones right now. There are static devices you can sit down to give you wireless broadband in an area. There are mobile phones available now, not all phones obviously, and one of the things is that obviously as you go forward you'll upgrade your devices, but as you go forward from here you might want to look at 5G. The advantage of 5G right this second, if you go and buy a 5G phone, the advantage that you will get is you'll get faster speeds.
Yep.
Some of the other advantages we're talking about you won't notice necessarily on day one, but you'll get faster speeds. Keep in mind that the phone's backwards compatible. So that if you're in an area that is in 5G and then you move outside that area, outside the range, then it will drop back to 4G and 3G. Now 3G, keep in mind, is still going at the moment, and some people have said to me, this is great with 5G, but we just want reception where we are, and that's a relevant point as well. There's still a lot of places that just don't have reception, and that needs to be addressed as well.
I got my phone and Wi-Fi at the moment, but anyway. more convenient to have it at Wi-Fi at the moment.
Well, that's right, and saves your data, saves your mobile data as well.
Well, yeah, but from the point of view of the way I use a phone in relation to the radio station, it's probably better for me to have it on Wi-Fi, but I will switch it over this afternoon and see what happens and collect a bit of data.
Yeah,
I might keep it on 5G and have a bit of a play.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, thanks for coming in and letting us know. The good thing about it was we were number 37 on the list to get Wi-Fi, and they moved us up the list, and I don't know why.
Yeah, look, to get 5G,
Yeah.
that's right. We certainly have jumped. We're probably ahead of the curve in terms of the various communities across the nation to get 5G. I'm not sure why. I suppose we'll never get a definite answer on that, but they obviously saw an opportunity in Dubbo and saw that people in Dubbo were using it, and probably market share in Dubbo might have had something to do with it as well. But I'm sure they've got an incredibly complicated Gantt chart or spreadsheet that talks about the rollout of their technologies.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dubbo's ahead of the curve, which is great, as we were with NBN, so it's great from a technology perspective in Dubbo.
Indeed it is, and that's upset Orange, Bathurst and Wagga, like you wouldn't want to know. Good. Thanks for coming in, mate. It's coming up to 25 to 11 right now, DCFM 88.9, and I thought this was an appropriate song to play after all that, The Land of Make Believe by the Easy Beats.